It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccerphiles Canada. Welcome to Series 31, looking at the players of the 2025 African Cup. This episode is looking at the players of Angola. Part 1, the candidates. Here we go! Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin and this is Series 31 on the players of the 2025 African Cup. This player is covering Angola's players. Just a note on where we're at in our media casts. We are publishing previews of the groups and teams of the 2025 African Cup. I do that with Connor. And that's coming out actually at the same time as this series on the players. Last summer, we previewed the groups, teams, and players for the 2025 CONCACAF Gold Cup. And we also did a media cast introducing ourselves. After this African Cup, we'll start tackling the massive 48-team World Cup in the summer of 2026. So we plan to start publishing episodes for that in the springtime of 2026. We're doing this media cast on the players in two parts. Part 1 here is a look at the candidates for the squad and their likelihood of making it. And we examine the participation of players over the games over the past 2 years or so, as well as a couple of other factors to categorize them into their likelihood of making the team. So definite, likely, possible but unlikely, and seemingly off the squad. And we'll go into more detail telling you about the players we think likely to reach the final squad, and less detail, perhaps just even the names of players less likely to get there. Part 2 is going to come out when the squad lists are released and the final squad selected. That'll probably be in early to mid-December. And at that time, we'll go over the list that we create here today and see who made it and who didn't. We'll also cover a couple of other things like updating injuries and highlighting surprise selections. So this episode has 3 sections. In section 1, we're going to look at some general information on the team. Section 2 is the main part. We cover the candidates in each position. And in section 3, we will summarize and conclude and review, and especially focusing on injuries to keep an eye on. All right, let's begin then with section 1 and a look at the team. So we have been actually looking at big names who are off the squad, but we're going to move that into sections 2 and 3. We'll summarize it at the end and talk about those players in section 2. So let's move on to club affiliations, give you an impression of the kind of clubs that Angola players play for. Most of the top players move to teams outside of Angola, while kind of the lesser players are generally with one of the bigger teams in the country. So the biggest teams there are Primeiro d'Agosto and Petro Atletico, sometimes called Petro de Luanda. So those are the 2 biggest teams. There are a couple of others like Interclub, but we don't want to go into too much detail. The top players represent a wide variety of teams, most of them playing in Europe, especially in Portugal, where actually some of the players are born. These are most likely second or third level clubs. So the biggest club represented, the biggest clubs are actually pretty much premier clubs, Udinese and Lyon. I didn't prepare a graphic for that. I prepared a graphic for the kind of the secondary level clubs. We have among the teams represented, I'm just trying to give you a taste of it here, Gil Vicente in Portugal, Alanyaspor in Turkey, and Amak Grozny in Russia, 3 of the teams that will come up as we go through the players. They also have a few outside of Europe, and they're kind of interesting. There's one who plays for Botafogo in Brazil, and then Zamalek, a big club in Egypt, and one in North America playing for FC Dallas. So We won't tell you who those players are. They'll come up in section 2. Maybe it'll entice you to listen to section 2. Okay, let's begin looking at the recent games in the build-up to the Cup here. And we're examining the position of players actually from after the 2023 African Cup, which took place in January of 2024. And by the way, I might refer to it as either the 2023 or 2024 African Cup as we go through this podcast. So Angola played 16 games over the period, and we will take a look at those games. We actually are going to start our narratives in section 2 with going back to look at who lined up in the 2023 African Cup, but it's not part of our count in terms of participation and deciding where to place the players. So that was in January of 2024. They reached the quarterfinals, so played 5 games in the Cup. And I'll say right now that it is the same manager throughout this period until the last 2 games. So Pedro Goncalves, the manager throughout all of these games. I'll tell you when that changes. In March of 2024, we have 2 friendlies there, and in June of 2024, they continued their 2026 World Cup qualifying campaign. That started actually in November of 2023, but 2 games there in June of 2024. After that, we have the 2024 COSAFA Cup. We have the same thing in the summer of 2025, so in the summer of both of those years, that tournament. Actually, for Angola, a lot of their top players do show up for that, some of the players in the starting lineup, but because some of the out-of-country players, some of the top players don't show up for that, we don't put it in the count because it kind of messes up the reliability. Actually, there's another tournament, the African National Championship, also in the summer of 2025, that we also don't count. So that is that. So the next thing we have for the senior team, or where we know they're going to kind of field their top players, is in the fall of 2025, from September to November, they have 6 African Cup qualifying games. That actually is the whole African Cup qualification taking place there in the fall of 2024. Moving on to 2025, in March, they go back to World Cup qualifying games. They have 2 of them there. In the summer, though, they have no duties, so most teams are playing friendlies, but Angola didn't play any, so no games there in June of 2025. But as I've mentioned, the COSAFA Cup and the African National Championship, both of those taking place over the summer of 2025, which we don't put in the count. Then in the fall of 2026, we have the end of World Cup qualifying games, but I have to divide this between the 2 September games and the 2 October games, because after the September games, the old manager is out and the new manager is in. We'll talk about that at the beginning of section 2. So 2 of the games were under the previous manager and 2 under the new manager. That's actually quite significant when we look at the lineups, because the new manager seemed to make some changes to what the old manager was doing. So there we have it. That adds up to 16 games that we're putting in the count there to judge their participation. And we move on to the formation section. This is unnecessarily complex, so we're going to kind of simplify it. They used 7 different formations. 4 of them they used just once. And we won't talk about those. We'll just tell you the top 3. So the top 3 were a 4-3-3 formation, which they used 7 times, 7 out of 16. So almost half the time, 44% to be exact. And then 3 of the 16 formations, that's 19%, were a 4-4-2 formation. And then twice they used a 3-4-3 formation. But let's break that down into patterns there. The we have a two-man central defense in 75% of the game, so this is actually a bit more digestible. And then a three-man defense in 25% of the games. So usually two central defenders, but a quarter of the time, three central defenders. And the same ratio for forwards there. In 75% or three quarters of the games, it's a single forward. And in 25% of the games, it's a double forward. Okay, and then in the 4-3-3 formation, we consider that a single forward plus two left and right, plus a left and right attacking midfielder there. So 75% a single forward, and then two forwards 25% of the time. I hope that comes across clearly, because I threw out a lot of words, a lot of verbiage there. Okay, let's finish this section by taking a look at their upcoming games. And in fact, both of them have been played, because we're doing this on November 19th. And they had a friendly on November 14th. And that was against Argentina, played in Angola. And they lost the game. In fact, we're not really interested in the scores here. I'm just telling you that out of interest. But a 2-0 loss to Argentina there. They had a game scheduled 4 days later with Guinea-Bissau, also to be played in Angola. That one was cancelled, so instead they played neighbours or nearby Zambia, and they won that game 3-2. Now, we kind of prepared this mediacast based on the games up to the end of November, up to the end of October. And I like to use these November games for part two. So I have astutely avoided looking at the lineups for those games. And we're going to use those in part two. So our look at participation goes up to the end of October. Okay, that is it for section one, and we move on to section two, and we'll immediately talk about the manager situation here, but we'll begin by introducing the characters in the drama. And we have manager Pedro Gonçalves, managing for most of the period here. Sorry, my computer's misbehaving. That's why I'm stuttering through my words. There, we have it now. Manager Pedro Gonçalves managing for most of the period, but then at the very end, Patrice Baumel coming in, and he will actually lead them through the cup. But before we introduce those managers, let's talk about a kind of a summary of what's gone on. So Pedro Gonçalves was their manager all the way back since 2019. Actually, he came in after Angola was knocked out at the group stage of the 2019 African Cup. Gonçalves actually didn't do that well. He survived a last place finish in 2021 African Cup qualifying, and also a last place finish in their group in 2022 World Cup qualifying. But Angola's persistence with him paid off when he finished with a first place finish in 2023 African Cup qualifying. And he also did well in the tournament with a quarterfinal place finish. So good for them. He also led them through a first place finish for qualifying for this cup, the 2025 African Cup. As you saw in section one, that was all done in the fall of 2024. However, they finished fourth of six in their 2026 World Cup qualifying group. And, whether they were disappointed at that result or for some other reason, the Angolan FA let him go. I read the respectful announcement they wrote for him. It was very respectful, but they did let him go on September 18th, and that was 2 games before the World Cup qualifying campaign was over, and actually before they were officially out of contention. So there we have it. 11 days later, so before the October games, Patrice Baumel was hired. And Gonçalves quickly got a job managing Young Africans. That's a top club in Tanzania, so that's where he is now. Meanwhile, Patrice Baumel guided them through the last two games of World Cup qualifying, and mixed results there. He played away in Eswatini, and they tied weak Eswatini, but then they played away in Cameroon and tied Cameroon. So make of that what you will. It was nevertheless a fourth place finish, which even in September seemed to be their likely result. So fourth of six, so they won't be in the World Cup there. We won't go into the biography much of Pedro Gonçalves. We've said pretty much what we need to say already, but let's take a look at Patrice Baumel. He was a player, a defender, played professionally in France from 1986 to 2000, but he didn't earn any international caps. As a manager, though, he has managed three national teams. One of them was Zambia in 2013 and 14. He didn't go through a tournament with them. The second was Ivory Coast, and he did take them through the 2021 African Cup, where they lost on penalties to Egypt in the round of 16. And now he is with Angola since 2025, since just very recently. He's managed a couple of clubs in Qatar and in Algeria, but not that many, truth be told. And yeah, so that's Patrice Baumel leading Angola through this cup. All right, let's move on to goalkeepers and begin by basically telling you who the candidates are, and then we'll summarize the position and come back and give you more details on the main candidates. So we have two definite candidates. The first one is Adilson Neblu, usually just called Neblu. And the second one, whose name I've struggled with, is Antonio, in brackets, Signori Dominique. But a couple of the sources I use call him Antonio Signori. But I went back and checked the games in the last cup, and they do call him Antonio Dominique. And indeed, he has Dominique on the back of his shirt. So I'm going to call him Antonio Signori Dominique, just so you're clear who I'm talking about. Those two are at the definite level. We have none at the likely level, but two at the possible level. The first one is Hugo Marquez, and the second one is Agostino Kalunga. And then we have a couple that are seemingly off the squad. The first one is Gelson Mangala. It might be pronounced Gelson, because that's the way the forward Gelson Dallas name is pronounced, but I'm not sure. Anyway, I'll call him Gelson Mangala because that'll provide better distinction from the forward. The second one is Kadu, also seemingly off the squad. Okay, those are the names. Let's take a look at the drama that unfolded since the African Cup. It was Neblu starting the first four games of the African Cup in January of 2024, but he got a red card 20 minutes into game four, and he was replaced by the backup keeper, Antonio Signori Dominique. Neblu returned for the first of the March 2024 friendlies, but Dominique played the second and actually looked as if he might challenge for the starting position. Not the case, however, as Neblu went on to start all games during the period, except for the last one in October 2025 under new manager Baumel. It was not Dominique, though, who started the last game, although he was called up to the team and was on the bench. It was Hugo Marquez, brought back in by the new manager, having been absent for 2 years from the squad. So Marquez came in at the expense of Agostino Kalunga, who seemed to be the third string keeper. He had been on the bench, prior to the October games there. So interesting drama. It may be that the manager likes Hugo Marquez more, but we don't have enough evidence to really know. But let's look at the candidates here. The first one is Nablu. He's been the starter for most of the period, and he's been with Angola since 2012 with 51 caps and is 32 years old, and he plays for Primeiro da Gusto in Angola. He's been in Angola for his whole club career. He was the backup keeper or on the bench for the 2013 African Cup, but wasn't selected for the 2019 edition. However, as we saw with the 2023 African Cup, he was the starter, at least until he got a red card there. And over the period we're looking at, which is from after the Cup onwards, he started 14 of their 16 games. He was on the bench for one and not selected for one. And he did also play in the African National Championship there. So Nablu, if this was being done at the beginning of September, I'd almost certainly say he was a starter. Now I'm not so sure. The other definite candidate is Antonio Signori Dominique, and he has been with Angola since 2014 with 18 caps and is 31 years old. And he plays in Switzerland. In fact, he was born in Switzerland, but he did come to Angola to play for Petro Atletico for a couple of years there. Otherwise, he's always been in Switzerland. And doesn't seem to have been a consideration for the 2019 African Cup there, but for the 2023, as we saw, he subbed into game 4. So he was the second string keeper, and he played the rest of that game and the quarterfinal there. For which Nablu was suspended. Over the period we're looking at, Dominique started one of their 16 games and was on the bench for 10, including the last 4 matches. He was injured for 4 matches over that period. But we saw it wasn't the last game he started, but I think it was the actually the first game after the Cup was the one that he started. Next, we have Hugo Marquez. So he is not new to the team. He's actually been on the team even longer than the other two, since 2011. And he has 22 caps for the national team. And he is 39 years old and plays for Petro Atletico in Angola. But he has played outside of Angola quite a bit, in South Africa and in Portugal for several teams over his career. He was part of the 2012 African Cup. He was on the roster but saw no action, so on the bench there, and but not part of any of the other tournaments that they played after that. But he did pop up now and again. He wasn't off the team completely. When he came back in October 2025, he had been off the team for 2.5 years. And as we saw, started the last game and was called up for both games by the manager. He was on the bench for one of them and started one of them. So interesting goings on, a little bit of drama there. The player paying the price for Marquez coming in is Agostinho Kalunga, and he's 25 years old and plays in Angola. And he got his first appearance on the bench in November of 2024, and he didn't start any games, but he was on the bench for 5, but not selected most significantly for the last match there, so kind of making way for Hugo Marquez. We'll just take a quick look at the 2 players who are seemingly off the squad. Gelson Mangala was actually a backup keeper in the 2023 African Cup there, but he last appeared in January of 2024. They actually brought 4 goalkeepers to the last African Cup. And the fourth of those keepers was the other seemingly off the squad player, Kadu, and that was his only tournament there, and he last appeared in October of 2024. So those 2 players don't seem to be in the mix here. All right, that's it for goalkeepers, and we'll move on to defence. And I'll just remind you that in 75% of games, central defence is a 2-man position, and in 25% of games, they add another player to make it a 3-man position. Our candidates here begin with the definite candidates, Keelan de Gaspar and David Carmo, the two definite candidates. Jonathan Buatu, only at the likely level this time around, and we'll tell you why as we go forward here. And then we have three candidates at the possible level, keeping in mind that we are filling 2 to 3 positions here. We have Bastos, who's an injury concern, and I'll tell you about that shortly. The second one is Alexander Abel, and the third one is Ruben Adarito. We have 2 players at the possible but unlikely level. The first one is Canito, and the second one, Vidinho. And then we have a couple of players who are seemingly off the squad. The first one, Inacio Miguel, and the second one, Jonas Ramalho. All right, those are the candidates. Let's take a look at the position over the period. So in the African Cup in January of 2024, it was primarily Keelan de Gaspar and Jonathan Buatu. Canito replaced Buatu in Game 4 and also came in as the third central defender in the first game, which was a 3-5-2 formation. Gaspar remained a constant over the period until the end, at least, but he was on the bench for 2 of the last 3 games. But he did start the last game under the new manager. Buatu, on the other hand, was on the bench after the Cup and then even off the squad for a few games toward the end. He did replace Gaspar in the games that Gaspar missed. That was the third and the second last games, but he was not selected for the last game under the new manager. Canito, who we saw briefly, I think, for 2 games in the African Cup, was basically off the squad after the Cup, and we didn't hear from him except that he played in the African Nation Championship in 2025. So for the most part, it was David Carmo who replaced Buatu alongside Gaspar, and he seemed the main central defender at the end, starting all 4 of the fall 2026 World Cup qualifiers. Bastos was brought in after a 3-year absence from the during the period. I'm updating you on Bastos. He was brought into the team after a 3-year absence for the fall 2024 African Cup qualifiers, but a long-term knee injury kind of prevented him going forward. So we'll tell you about that when we talk to him. But in short, it looked like Bastos was making inroads into the team, but his knee injury got in the way. Okay, let's look at the candidates then in more detail. So we begin with definite candidate Keelan de Gaspar. He has been with Angola since 2020 and has amassed 45 caps with 1 goal, and he's 26 years old. He plays for Lecce in Italy there, and his first tournament was the 2023 African Cup, and he started and finished all 5 games, as we saw, and continued to start over the period, starting 13 of their 16 games up to October 2024, and he was on the bench for 2 and not selected for 1 other, and that's at the end there, making us a bit doubtful as to whether he'll be the starter, but we think he's definitely going to be selected. The other definite selection is David Carmo. He's new to the team since 2024, but he has 14 caps and is 24 years old. He plays, or is at least on the roster for Nottingham Forest in England since 2024, but actually was loaned to a couple of teams there, Real Oviedo in Spain. Right now is where he is, and he was with Porto in Portugal before moving to Notts Forest, and he has twice been loaned to Olympiacos in Greece. So pretty good resume there for David Carmo. He got his first cap right after the Cup there in March of 2024 and started 13 of their 16 games, just like Gaspar. And he was subbed in for one and on the bench for one and not selected for one. But as we said, he did start the last 4 games. So most significantly, 2 of them under the new manager. And basically, he's taking Jonathan Boatu's position. Jonathan Boatu now just a likely candidate. He's been with Angola since 2014 with 57 caps and 2 goals and is 32 years old. And he plays for Gil Vicente in Portugal since 2024 and has played for clubs in France and Belgium as well. In fact, he was born in Belgium, Jonathan Boatu. He was selected for the 2019 African Cup, but he didn't see any action in that tournament. However, he was a starter for the 2023 African Cup. We saw that he was replaced in game 3 there, but he started the other 4 games. Jonathan Boatu actually scored a goal in qualifying for the 2026 World Cup campaign. He only, though, after the Cup, started 4 of their 16 games, and he was on the bench for 8, but not selected for 3 others, including the last match. So it does look like Carmo is kind of taking his starting position. Let's go look at the possible candidates. We have 3 of them, beginning with Bastos. Bastos is a real veteran for the team since 2011 with 60 caps, and he's 34 years old. He was a starter in the 2019 African Cup, but was not selected even for the preliminary squad for the 2023 African Cup. So he, by the way, he's the one who plays for Botafogo in Brazil. He has a very interesting resume. Bastos returned after a 3-year absence then in September of 2024 and started 5 of their remaining 12 games. All of those starts were in the fall of 2024, so it looked like he was really making a bid to be a starter. However, he got a knee injury and was out for all of 2025, and I might as well let you know about that now. So he got that knee injury in February of 2025 and has been out for the whole time, so an unknown return date on him. So perhaps in part 2 we'll have a bit more information, but for right now it's unknown, and probably he wouldn't be able to work his way back into the starting position there. That's very unfortunate for Bastos. The second possible candidate is Alexander Abel. He's new to the team since 2025 and has 3 caps. I think they were all substitute appearances. He didn't start any games, and at least one of those caps. Yeah, he was subbed into. No, he wasn't subbed into the game. So the caps were in the COSAFA Cup there, Alexander Abel, but he was called up for the senior team, so a possible candidate. He was called up for the last 2 games under the new manager. In fact, I think that's why we put him as a possible candidate here. The other one, Ruben Adarito, has no caps for the national team, and he got his first appearance on the bench in October of 2025, so also called up under the new manager and perhaps being considered. That's why I'm really looking forward to looking at their November games and any other games that they play prior to the Cup. They don't have any friendly scheduled for December, but I'm sure they will schedule some. And we can let you know in part 2 if these players actually get onto the field. Let's look at our possible but unlikely candidates. We saw actually Kinito playing a couple of games, starting 2 games in the African Cup 2023. But long story short, he last appeared. When did he last appear? He was on the bench for 2 games and not selected for 16 games. So I'm not sure when those 2 games were, but basically has been off the squad there. The other one, Vidinho, Uh, um, Returned after a 3-year absence in October 2024 for a single appearance on the bench there, but he does have actually quite a few caps in those lesser competitions, the COSAFA Cup and African National Championship. Vidinho, so possible but unlikely. Vidinho far less likely than Canito there. And then two seemingly off the squad players, Inacio Miguel, was selected for the 2023 African Cup, but was not called up to the team after that. He was just on the bench in that cup. And the second one, Jonas Ramalho, is a Spanish-born player who plays in Belgium, but last appeared for the team in June of 2024. So neither of those players looking likely, and we will introduce them in more detail in part two if they're selected for the final squad. Meanwhile, let's move on to left backs and introduce the candidates. We have none at the definite level, actually. But at the likely level, we have Toe Carneiro, and we also have Pedro Bondo. And then at the possible level, also two players, Nurio Fortuna and Sandro Cruz. So four candidates there. Let's look at how the position played out. Nurio Fortuna, to our surprise, started the first two games of the Cup. He pushed up to a left wing position in game one because that was the 3-5-2 formation. It was a surprise to us that Tocanero hadn't been the starter, but he did come in for the last three games there. But over the period, it turned out that that wasn't such a surprise because Fortuna started half of the games going forward, while Tocanero only started two games and only one as left back. He was a right back in the other game. Rather, it was Pedro Bondo who started 5 games, and Sandro Cruz even started more than Tocanero. He started 2 of the games. Things changed under the new manager in the last 2 games, though. Tocanero came back and started both of them, while Fortuna, who had only started actually 1 game in 2025. Most of his starts were in 2024. Fortuna and Bondo, neither of those were selected under the new manager. So Tocanero seems back to being the main candidate here. Let's look at the players, beginning with Tocanero. And he's been with Angola since 2017 with 43 caps and 1 goal. And he's 30 years old. He plays for FAR Rabat in Morocco since 2024. He was in Angola before that. He wasn't selected for the 2019 African Cup. We expected him to be a starter in the 2023 African Cup, but as you saw, he was on the bench for the first 2 games and then gained the starting position. And he only started 4 matches over this period. That includes the last 2 under the new manager, but he was off the squad quite a bit, not selected for 8 of the 16 matches. But yes, his recent starts under the new manager has us putting him at the likely level. Pedro Bondo is the other likely candidate. He has been with Angola since 2024 with 17 caps and 1 goal, although I think most of those are in the lesser competitions there, not for the senior team. He's only 21 years old, Pedro Bondo, and he plays in Portugal with Famalicão there, and he was loaned to Sporting Lisbon a couple of years ago there. He played for their B team. He was actually on the preliminary squad for the 2023 African Cup, but didn't make the final cut. And he returned after a 1.5 year absence in September of 2024 and did start 5 games for the senior team here, and he subbed in for 3 as well. So half of his caps are for the senior team. However, as we saw, he wasn't selected for the last 2 matches. So Tempted to put him down to possible, but we just don't know what's going to happen under the new manager. He may come back in the November games. The first of the possible candidates is Nurio Fortuna, and he's been with Angola since 2019 with 25 caps and 1 goal, and is 30 years old. He plays for Ghent in Belgium since 2020, or at least has been on their roster because he's been loaned out a couple of times by them recently, though. Loaned to Volos in Greece currently, and has played for teams mostly in Portugal there. I don't have a note that he was born in Portugal, but judging by his youth career, it looks like he was. Anyway, Nurio Fortuna was selected for the African Cup in 2024, and as we saw, a bit of a surprise starter for us. He started games 1 and 2, but then he lost his starting position there. Over the period, Nurio Fortuna was the starter for most of 2024, starting 7 of their 16 games there. But towards the end, he was beset by injuries. He was out with 2 separate injuries, only for 3 games there. But became more of a bench player, and then not selected for 3 matches, including the last 2 under the new manager. So Nurio Fortuna drifting off the squad there and not favoured by the new manager as far as we can see. The other possible candidate is Sandro Cruz. He's been with Angola since 2024 with 7 caps. He started 2 of the games over the period, so the other 3 caps, or the other 5 caps, must have been for the lesser tournaments there. Cruz started 2, was on the bench for 6, but not selected for 6 matches, including the last 4 matches. So they're at the possible level. Again, maybe possible, but unlikely, but we're just a bit uncertain under the new manager there. All right, that's the left backs. Let's go over to the right backs here and begin by nominating the candidates. We have Eddie Afonso as a likely candidate, so no definite candidates. We actually have Antonio Rossi coded as a right back. He did play 1 game as a right back, and in fact that was under the new manager, but over the period plays mostly as a right midfielder, so we're going to talk about him there. But we will remind you that he did come back and play right back once. He's not on the list then, we'll talk about him later. The other likely candidate after Eddie Afonso is Clinton Mata. And then we have 2 possible candidates in Rui Modesto, a bit of an interesting case there, and in Jordi Gaspar. And finally, we have 2 seemingly off the squad players in Lloyd Augusto, and I'm not sure how to pronounce it, Gigli or Jiggly. I'll say Jiggly and Defe. Both of those seemingly off the squad. Let's take a look at the narrative of the position, and actually it is Lloyd Augusto who started the first game of the Cup, but then he got kicked off the team and never returned. So it was Eddie Afonso starting the next 4 games. Afonso started the first game also in March of 2024, but was basically off the squad after that. But he did return near the end. In his absence, Jordi Gaspar and right midfielder Clinton Mata. We've moved him here, but I forgot to say that he's actually coded as a right midfielder, Clinton Mata. Jordi Gaspar and Clinton Mata basically shared duties over the rest of the period, but it's not as clear as that because several players came in for 1 or 2 appearances, and that suggests the position is unsettled. For example, Eddie Afonso was one of those players. He returned for the second last game, or it must have been the third last game. It was the last game under old manager Gonçalves. However, the new manager used two different players in each of his games. Clinton Mata was one of them, and the other is the player we shifted to the midfield. Um, Sorry, I'm looking for his name. Antonio Hossi. That's when he came back into the right under the new manager. So changes afoot there. Let's look at the candidates here. Eddie Afonso. Probably we've put him too high up on the list here. He is a likely candidate because he came back towards the end there. Eddie Afonso has been with Angola since 2013. He does have 43 caps and is 31 years old and plays for Petro Atletica in Angola. His whole career has been in Angola. He was selected for the 2019 African Cup, but just on the bench there. And in the African Cup recently, the last one, we saw that he gained a starting position after Lloyd Augusto was sent home. So Eddie Afonso a starter there. But over the period, he started only 2 of their 16 games and was not selected for 10 of the matches. So, but that coming back at the end there makes us put him at the likely level. Here, I'm beginning to question that maybe more of a possible candidate, but we'll see. The other candidate is Clinton Massa. I forgot to say when introducing him, he's actually coded as a right midfielder, but we moved him back to right defense here. Because this is where he fits into the narrative best. And he does sometimes push up to a right winger position when it's a 3-man defense. So maybe he is a bit of a right midfielder. Anyway, Clinton Mata has been with Angola since 2014 and he has 16 caps and he's 33 years old. And perhaps he's coming back into prominence after an 8-year absence because he is now playing for Lyon in France, so one of the biggest club affiliations on the team there, and played for Club Bruges in Belgium before that. So I think actually in his later years here, he is getting better or playing for bigger clubs. He wasn't really a consideration for the 2019 World Cup. Well, I guess he was on the preliminary squad there, but didn't make the final cut. I say that because even though he was named to that preliminary squad, he hadn't played for them for a long time. He actually returned in June of 2024 after an 8-year absence. So 2016 had been the last time he was called up. Actually, one of my sources does have him as an unused substitute in 2019, but my main source doesn't report that. So we'll call it an 8-year absence when he came back in June of 2024. And he started 7 of their 14 games and was subbed in for 1, but not selected for 6 others. But as we saw, the new manager did give him a start there. So Clinton Mata at the likely level here. An interesting candidate is our first possible candidate. It's Rui Modesto. He also is coded as a right midfielder, but we moved him back to this position because it was the only position he played in, although he sometimes too pushed up to a right winger position when it was a 3-man defense. Rui Modesto has been with Angola since 2023, but only has 4 caps. And he is 26 years old. What makes him interesting is he has also one of the biggest club affiliations on the squad. He's with Udinese in Italy since 2024. I was with AIK in Sweden, a reasonably big club, prior to that. So Rui Modesto, I'm surprised that he's not being called up much. He was selected for the preliminary squad for the 2023 African Cup, but was not chosen for the final squad there. And even over this period, he got a couple of starts, but hasn't appeared, was not called up since October of 2024. But given that club affiliation, I wonder if the new manager would be interested in him. It seems hard to leave him out of consideration here. So that's why we have Rui Modesto as a possible candidate. Really, his record over the period makes him unlikely or even seemingly off the squad. But how can you ignore a player who plays for Udinese? And I checked to see whether he does play for Udinese. Actually, in the last year, has been mostly on the bench. But in January and the spring of 2024, he was getting a bit of field time, even a few starts for Udinese. So there we have it, Rui Modesto. I wouldn't be surprised if we see the new manager bringing him in. Okay, the next one is also at the possible level, Jordi Gaspar. Not to be confused with the central defender Gaspar. Jordi Gaspar is new to the team since 2024. He has 8 caps and is 28 years old, and he plays for Pau in France. From 2017 to 20, he played for Monaco in France, and he also played for Lyon in France, just like Clinton Mata there. He was with them in 2016 and 17. So, but he's kind of gone down in his club affiliations. Jordi Gaspar was born in France. He got his first cap for Angola in March of 2024 and started 3 of their remaining 16 games, as well as subbing in for 2. However, Jordi Gaspar was not selected for the last 6 matches. Again, we might put him at possible, but unlikely, but we don't know what the new manager is going to think. Let's look quickly at the seemingly off the squad players. Lloyd Augusto was selected for the 2023 African Cup, but after game 1, he was sent home for disciplinary reasons. The announcer was quite dodgy about it. He said he was sent home for misconduct, shall we say. So I'm not even sure. I tried to look into the details, but I'm not sure what he did. But anyway, that's not good, and he wasn't called up since then. He's got an interesting career too. He played for Vasco da Gama in Brazil right now, but is on loan to Rizespor in Turkey. So pretty interesting career for Lloyd Augusto, but apparently too problematic for the team to consider. Again, maybe a player who'll come back in under the new manager. He's only 25 years old, Lloyd Augusto. Finally, we have Jigli Ndefe. He was born in the Netherlands and last appeared on the bench in October 2023. Oh, well, actually, he last appeared as a candidate on the preliminary squad for the last cup. But I'm honestly not sure why I have him on the list here. He seems well off the squad. Okay, that is it for right backs. And let's move on to the midfield. We're going to introduce defensive midfielders by name, and then we're going to introduce the central midfielders as well before we do the narrative. So quite a few names to deal with here because they often use a 4-3-3 formation we saw in 44% of their games. And what makes it difficult for Angola is they really don't distinguish defensive and central midfielders, nor do they distinguish left and right midfielders. So it kind of feels like a clump of 2 to 3 players in the midfield. So bear with me here. I've tried to make it digestible. And I think that's the second time I use that word. I don't know why I'm suddenly using it. But here we go. We have a likely, no definite defensive midfielder, but a likely candidate in Show. And I've struggled with this name for ages. It's a nickname of Louis da Silva Capumana, and I've heard it pronounced different ways. But actually, I went back and looked at the 2023 African Cup there, and they do pronounce it as Show, as in TV show. So I'm going to go with that, with Show. He's a likely candidate. At the possible level, we have Kellyanne Manuel, and then possible but unlikely Domingos Andrade, and seemingly off the squad Estrella, although he does appear in the narrative there. We have another one also who appeared in the narrative, Bruno Paz, but he also seemingly off the squad now. Let's go to central midfielders. We have a definite candidate in Freddie or Freddie Kulembe, and also a definite candidate in Maestro. He is new to the squad. Fairly new to the squad. I'll get into that. A likely candidate in Benny or Benny Mukendi, and also the right back we mentioned, who we moved to the midfield, Antonio Hossi. Keeping in mind he did go back to right back under the new manager. And we have possible candidates in Ari Papal and Meg, Megue, Meg. And finally, we have a possible but unlikely candidate in Mario Balberdia. So let's go to the narrative, and then these names will fit in a bit better for you. In the Cup, Show and Freddie were the main players. Show did actually miss one start in game 3 there, but Show and Freddie were the main players. However, it was mostly a 3-man midfield, so we need to add a player, and those players were Bruno Paz starting once and Estrella starting 3 times. But as we saw in introducing them, both of them look like they're off the team. Paz last played in the Cup and Estrella in October 2024. So they've both been off the team for more than a year. However, Show and Freddie remained starters for most of the period. However, Maestro, who effectively joined the squad after the Cup, made inroads into the team. At least in the first half of the period, but towards the end, Show actually did return to start the 2 September 2024 games. And Antonio Hossi got a couple of starts in the fall of 2024, but actually it's Benny Mukendi coming in towards the end there. So under the new manager, maybe we just kind of erase everything before September 2024, because under the new manager, we did see Hossi get a start, but that was as a right defender. It's Freddie and Benny Mukendi who were retained, and Maestro got the start ahead of Show under the new manager as well. So we really need to see what he's going to do in the next couple of games to get an impression there. But let's introduce the candidates. So we're going to the defensive midfielder, the likely candidate Show, and he is been with the team since 2017 with 58 caps and 1 goal. He's only 26 years old, and he's playing for Maccabi Haifa in Israel since 2023. He was with Ludogorets Razgrad in Bulgaria before that, and Lille in France. So an interesting career for Show. He was part of the 2019 African Cup. He started one game and subbed into one game, and then we saw in the 2023 African Cup, Show started 4 of the 5 games there. Over the period, he started 11 of the 16 games, but he was not selected for 3, and that includes the last match under the new manager. So there we have it. I would be surprised, though, if he wasn't part of the squad, even a starter. Anyway, let's go to the possible candidate, Keilano Manuel, and he's been with the team since 2023 and has 21 caps and 2 goals, and he's 22 years old. I'm pretty sure some of those caps, though, were in the lesser competitions. He was, though, selected for the African Cup in 2023, and he subbed into 3 games there, and he started one of their 16 games over the period. He started the last game there. That was his only start over the period. So yes, most of his games were for what I'll call the B team in the 2024 and 2025 COSAFA Cups. But we have Gailano Manuel as a possible candidate because he showed up for the last game or was selected to start the last game. Domingos Andrade is a possible but unlikely candidate, so we won't give as many details. He is with Porto B in Portugal there since 2024. But he has not appeared for the last 4 matches. He was not selected for 10 of the matches over the period, and that includes the last 4. So we think he's unlikely. We did meet the 2 seemingly off the squad players. We met them in the Cup. The first one is Estrella, and selected for the Cup. He plays in China, but he last appeared in October of 2024, so seemingly off the squad. The other one is Bruno Paz, and he plays in Moldova, and was selected for the African Cup, but last appeared in that African Cup, was not called up after that. So again, there is a chance the new manager will call them back, but for the time being, they look like they're off the squad. We also have the candidates in the central midfield that we want to look at, the 2 definite candidates. Freddie is the first one. He's the captain of the team and has been with Angola since 2014 and has 65 caps and 4 goals and is 25 years old. So no, wait. I thought that was way too young. He's 35 years old. What am I talking about? We did have him coded as a central attacking midfielder, but over the past couple of campaigns, I feel that needs to be changed. In this period, he was just in the central midfield, even though various positions in the central midfield. Anyway, Freddie now plays for Bodrum in Turkey. I'm not even familiar with that team since 2024. He's played for 3 teams in Turkey recently. Antalyaspor, I am more familiar with. He was with them from 2019 to 2023. Otherwise played in Portugal and Belgium and also in Angola during the middle of his career, even though his youth career was spent in Portugal. And he was a starter in the 2019 African Cup. And then Freddie was a captain in the 2023 African Cup, starting all games there. And over the period, Freddie started 13 of their 16 games. And just 3 matches that he was not selected for. So Freddie, a definite candidate to make the squad. Maestro, as I said, effectively came in after the Cup. He actually did get his first cap in 2023, but was on the preliminary squad for the last African Cup and not selected. He plays for Alanyaspor, and that's a different team than the one I mentioned for Freddie. Maestro has played for a couple of clubs in Turkey and a couple of clubs in Portugal. His youth club was in Angola, though. He also was on the preliminary squad. Oh, yes, I said that already. So over the period, Maestro really made inroads into the team, starting 7 of their 16 games. And he was also subbed in for 7 and on the bench for 2 others. So he's been called up all the time. That's why we have him as a definite candidate, but it remains to be seen whether he was a starter. He did kind of snatch the starting position over Shaw for the last game there. Okay, our likely candidate is Benny Mukendi, sometimes known as just Benny, and he's been with Angola since 2023 with 8 caps. He's 23 years old, and he plays for Casa Pia in Portugal, a fairly small club there, and was on the squad for the 2023 African Cup, but he complained about not starting, and he returned to his club after game 2. And I felt that was a bit ridiculous because he really hadn't been, much of a starter for the club prior to that, so his expectations seemed too high. He's not even with a very big team. Anyway, he returned after a 14-month absence in March of 2025 and started 4 of their 6 remaining games. And subbed in for one and was on the bench for the other. And as we saw, even the new manager started him. So Benny Mukendi, maybe he wasn't so wrong in claiming a starting spot after all. Anyway, he's a likely candidate to be selected for the squad. Antonio Rossi has been with Angola since 2022 with 33 caps, and he's 24 years old. I'm certain most of those caps are in kind of B competitions there. He was a consideration for the African Cup in 2023, Antonio Rossi, but he didn't make the final cut and actually returned after an almost 2-year absence in October of 2024. To start 3 of their remaining 10 games. He was subbed in for 3 and on the bench for 4 others. So regularly called up, and as I said, played as a right back under the new manager there, Antonio Rossi. The first of our 2 possible candidates, Ari Papel, a veteran with the team since 2012 with 53 caps and 9 goals, and he's 31 years old. He plays for Libya. He plays in Libya, actually, having moved from Ismaili in Egypt in 2022, and he played in Saudi Arabia and Portugal also. Ari Papel, though, has never been called up to a tournament. It was a bit of a surprise in 2023 that he wasn't called up, but over this period, he returned after a 2.5-year absence in October of 2025. Didn't start either of those games, but was subbed in for both. So keeping in mind then that is being called up basically out of the cold by the new manager. And I've always been surprised that Ari Papel hasn't started or hasn't played a bit of a bigger role with Angola. There, so perhaps he'll get his chance under the new manager. I'm not sure if I mentioned that he was 31 years old, so still has a few years left in him. The next one is Meg. I always feel like I got to spell the name, Megue. He's been with Angola since 2021 with 21 caps and 4 goals and is 29 years old. He plays for a lesser team in Saudi Arabia, having moved from Angola just recently in 2025. And Meg was on the preliminary squad for the previous cup, and over this period started 1 of their games and subbed in for 2, but not selected for 12 matches. However, he also was called up by the new manager, even if he was just on the bench. So I'm not surprised the manager is checking out these players at least, but we'll have to see what comes of it, whether he's going to reinstate such players into the squad. The possible but unlikely candidate is Mario Balbardia. He is, let me see, he came back after an almost 2-year absence in October 2025. But didn't start the last game, but subbed into one of them for 1 minute. Oh, he just came back for the last game. So maybe I'm going to move him to possible because he's being called in by the new manager, just like the other ones. So Mario Balbardia had been basically off the squad, but being given a try by the new manager. So again, it's hard for us to make conclusions just on 2 games of evidence there. All right, we move there from central midfield up to the attacking end of the field. And we begin with left attackers. And just let me tell you a bit about this position. It kind of covers the upper left quadrant of the field. In the formations that Angola mostly use, it's actually part of a 3-man forward line. So it'd be the left outside forward and the right outside forward that we consider for this position. And in the 4-4-2, it will be a left and right attacking winger. They did use a 4-2-3-1 once, where it's a left attacking midfielder, and we call the position left attacking midfielder. Generally, it's the same player regardless of the formation. And let's begin by introducing the candidates. We have Felicio Milson often just called Milson, as a definite candidate. And we have Gelson Dalla, who's actually coded as a forward, but we move him here because this is where he played mostly over the period. He's a likely candidate, surprisingly. And then we have two possible candidates, Chico Banza and Anderson Cruz. And then one player seemingly off the squad, Jeremy Bella. So those are the characters in our drama. Let's look at the how it played out over the period. So, well, the first game was a 3-5-2 formation, so this position didn't exist. It was left back Nurio Fortuna pushing up to become a left winger. Over here, that was in the first game of the African Cup in 2024. But after that, it was forward Gelson Dalla playing in the position for the next 4 games of the Cup. In March of 2024, Jeremy Bella started the first 2 games, but he was not called up after that. Gelson Dalla returned for the next 4 games, and for 1 game in this position in March 25 on top of that. But otherwise, he was surprisingly off the squad, Gelson Dalla, and replacing him was Felicio Milson, who had been just a substitute in the Cup. Milson missed a couple of games, though, and so we had a couple of players that got starts, including Chico Banza, who also took the spot from Milson for the last game under the new manager. So that's why we have Chico Banza over on this side and as a possible candidate. Okay, let's look at the candidates. Felicio Milson played a couple of other positions over the period, also a forward, and I think as a left attacking midfielder as well. Felicio Milson has been with Angola since 2020 with 30 caps and 4 goals, and he's 26 years old. And currently playing for Red Star Belgrade in Serbia since 2024. And he's played in Israel and Russia and in Portugal, but his youth club or his first club was in Angola. Felicio Milson was subbed into 3 games of the African Cup there. That's all the action he saw there, but he did get a crucial late winning goal in qualifying for that cup. Don't know why I'm telling you that. I'm telling you because I thought it was in the cup, but actually it was in qualifying. But he did score 2 of their goals in qualification for this cup, though. Milson started 8 of their 16 games, as well as subbing in for 6. And the only matches he was not selected for were the first 2 in March of 2024 there. So, Milson, a definite candidate. Gelson Dalla, a real star in the Cup, but just a likely candidate here. He is he was with Angola since 2015 with 51 caps and an impressive 21 goals. And he's 29 years old and currently playing for Al Wakra in Qatar, actually for the last 3 years there, and with clubs in mostly Portugal prior to that, including Sporting Lisbon. There, he was a part of the 2019 African Cup squad. He subbed into game 1 at halftime and then got a starting position, and then was a starter in 2023, where he actually was very impressive there. And but over the period here, he only started 6 of their 16 games and was subbed in for 1. He was injured for 2, but not selected for 7 matches, including the last 2 matches under the new manager. But I'd be very surprised if they didn't use him. Anyway, Gelson Dalla, a likely candidate. The first of 2 possible candidates is Chico Banza, and he's actually coded as a forward like Gelson Dalla, but we moved him here because most of his starts were here. Chico Banza's been with Angola since 2018 with 17 caps and no goals, and he is 27 years old. He plays for Zamalek, one of the big clubs in Egypt, since 2025, and was with clubs in Cyprus and Portugal prior to that. He was selected for the 2023 African Cup, Chico Banza, but not only not on the field, but not even on the bench for any of the 5 games. Not sure why that was. Well, I mean, they brought 27 players, but could only bring up 23 to the bench, so he didn't even get onto the bench. Chico Banza has started 3 of their 16 games over the period, but significantly, that includes the last match. He started 3 overall and was subbed in for 4, but not selected for 9 matches over the period. And he also is one of several players who was on the COSAFA Cup team in 2025. The next one is possible level is Anderson Cruz. Been with Angola since 2021, but only 5 caps in that period, and he's 29 years old and plays for Petro Atletica in Angola. But he has played in Portugal, actually, and he even played in Bolivia, which is quite interesting, for Bolivar. He was on the preliminary squad for the 2023 African Cup. Even that much was a bit of a surprise. But he had gotten his first cap in 2021 and returned after a 4.5-year absence, but didn't start any games over the period. He just subbed in for one and was on the bench for one. But those were fairly recent. He came back in September of 2025. Not only were those recent, but they were under the old manager. He wasn't selected for the last 2 matches under the new manager. So Anderson Cruz, a possible candidate here, we'll have to see. And finally, we have seemingly off the squad Jeremy Bella, and he's a French-born player, currently unattached to a club, but he's played for Birmingham in England and several clubs in France. And he was selected for the 2023 African Cup. He subbed into the last 3 games there. However, not selected for the team after March of 2024, Jeremy Bella. So seemingly off the squad there. Okay, that's the left attacking end of the field. Let's look at the right attacking side. And here we have 2 likely candidates, no definite candidates, but we begin with Zito Luvumbo. Some sources code him as a forward. I have him as a right winger or right attacking midfielder here, Zito Luvumbo. And we also have Benson Manuel as a likely candidate here. And then as a possible candidate, Gilberto. And then possible but unlikely is Jaredi Texera. Possible but unlikely. Okay, let's look at the position over the period. So again, no attacking midfielder in the first game, the 3-5-2 formation. It was right back Lloyd Augusto pushing up to become a winger, but we consider that a right back position pushing up. That was in the first game, but after Lloyd Augusto was sent home, Gilberto played the following 4 games. And Gilberto got one more start in March of 2024, but was just a substitute after that. Benson Manuel started the June 2024 World Cup qualifiers. However, he was injured for all of the fall games, and it was really out of position players who filled in, most notably Zito Luvumbo, who most sources have as a forward. I think he played 3 of the 6 games there. Benson Manuel returned in March of 2025 and then started 4 of the 5 games, which includes the first under the new manager, Benson Manuel. But for the second game under the new manager, Zito Luvumbo comes back into the picture. And over the period, we did have left attacking midfielder Felicio Milson and attacking midfielder, who we'll meet soon, Randy Nteka, each starting twice in the position. So it was fairly undecided under the old manager, at least, and then 2 different players, Benson Manuel and Zito Luvumbo, under the new manager. Let's take a look at these players in more detail. Zito Luvumbo, been with Angola since 2019 with 25 caps and no goals. He's 23 years old and plays for Cagliari in Italy since 2020. There, he moved from Angola to play in Italy there. And Luvumbo was selected for the 2023 African Cup. He started game one, but then lost his starting position, just appeared as a substitute in the games after that. Luvumbo started 8 of their 16 games over the period, as well as subbing in for 2. He was out with 2 separate injuries for 3 games, and not selected for 4 matches, but actually those were the first 4 after the Cup. So from September 2024, he has been consistently called up, and that's why we had Zito Luvumbo as a likely candidate. Benson Manuel, new to the team in 2024 with just 6 caps, even though he is 28 years old. And he plays with Burnley in England, actually just on their roster because he's been loaned to Swansea in the English League, but in Wales. Since 2025, he played in Belgium before that, and in fact was born in Belgium, Benson Manuel. And he got his first cap in June of 2024 and started 5 of their remaining 14 games. But as we saw, he was injured for 6. Those were in the fall of 2024. And not selected for 2 matches besides Benson Manuel, but he was selected by the new manager as well, and we have him as a likely candidate. Possible candidate, Gilberto, played a big role in the Cup. He's been with Angola since 2022 with 6 caps and 3 goals, and is 24 years old, so still very young. He plays in South Africa for Orlando Pirates, or at least is on their roster because he's been loaned back to his original team, Petro Atletico, in Angola since 2025. And he was selected for the 2023 African Cup. Gilberto, he was on the bench for game 1 and then gained a starting position, as we saw. Over the period, though, he only started 1 of their 16 games, but he was subbed in for 6 and on the bench for 2. So ultimately, just 5 matches he wasn't selected for. And also kind of made an impression in the Cup. So Gilberto, a bit of a surprise that he's been used as little as he has, but still a possible candidate for us here. And the possible but unlikely candidate is Jaridi Texera. And yeah, I'm not sure why I have him on the list, because he's only been used in local tournaments and in friendlies. So we'll give more details on him if he is selected for the squad, but it's unlikely. And that is it for right attackers. Let's move on to central attackers. We did have Freddie Columbe, maybe miscoded as a central attacking midfielder because he's played in the central midfield for quite a while. Actually, before the 2023 African Cup, he played in various positions, but just as a central midfielder during this period, and we've dealt with him. So here we only have one candidate, and it's Randy Nteka, but he is at the likely level here. His starts were actually as a right attacking midfielder twice and as a forward 3 times, because there was only one time. I'll talk about the position here. It was used once in the Cup and only twice after, and it was different players every time. And none of those players were Randy Nteka, so he played in different positions. We decided, we didn't decide anything. We'll just introduce the candidate. We won't talk about the position. That's what we decided over the period, because it really doesn't help that much. Randy Nteka has been with Angola since 2024 with 13 caps and 2 goals, and is 28 years old. He's on the roster, or he actually plays for Rayo Vallecano in Spain since 2021. And he was born in France, actually, but most of his clubs have been in Spain. He did score a goal in qualifying for this cup. He got his first cap in June of 2024, actually started 5 of their remaining 14 games, as well as subbing in for 3. But he was not selected for the 2 matches under the new manager there. But a lot of his caps come from COSAFA Cup play there as well. So Randy Nteka, nevertheless, a likely candidate here, probably not in this position though. And we move on to actual forwards. We don't have any players coded as secondary strikers, so we'll go right to forwards here. We've moved a couple of them out, as you might recall. Gelson Dalla and Chico Banza we moved to the left attacking midfield. But nevertheless, we're left with Mabululu as a likely candidate, so no definite candidates here. And then we have Depu also as a likely candidate. Then at the likely level. Then at the possible level, we have Zini. I'm going to reconsider him because I didn't actually write down what level we thought he was at. He is an injury concern, though, so we'll talk about that as well. Also at the possible level, Mbala Nzola. And then possible but unlikely, Joe Paciencia. And seemingly off the squad, we have Va. And Lucas Zhao, seemingly off the squad. Okay, we'll look at those players after the summary here. Those 2 players who we moved, who were coded as forward, Gelson Dalla and Chico Banza, actually did start as forwards in the first game, the 3-5-2 formations, but then after that basically played as attacking midfielders. Sorry, no, it wasn't. It was Gelson Dalla and not Chico Banza. It was Zito Luvumbu who started the first game. I think I said that most sources do code him as a forward, but he did play as a right midfielder during this period, or right attacking midfielder. Anyway, so that's the first game of the Cup that I've got covered. It was Mabulu after that, for all 4 games playing as a single forward. And Mabulu continued to start after the Cup up until September of 2024. However, only once after that, and he was mostly off the squad under old manager Gonçalves. Mabululu's replacement were several starting players starting just once or twice. The only one really standing out was Zini, who started 3 times. And in October of 2025, Mabululu returned, starting the last 2 games under the new manager. He started as a single forward once and alongside right attacking midfielder Benson Manuel in the other game. So there we go, Mabululu kind of back in it here. And let's take a look at him. He is Mabululu with Angola since 2013 with 24 caps and 6 goals. And he is 33 years old. And he plays for Al Ahly Tripoli, not Al Ahly in Egypt, but in Libya. He has played in Egypt, though. He was with Al Ittihad from 2021 to 2024, and then largely in Angola prior to that. In fact, very much all of his clubs in Angola. He was actually off the team for a 5-year period before 2000, from 2013 to 2018 there. So he's kind of getting his moment in the sun here. He was selected for the African Cup in 2019, but only subbed into 2 games there. And as we saw for the 2023 African Cup, he subbed into the first game, but then gained a starting position for the 4 games after that. Really was one of the defining players of the tournament, Mabalulu. Um, and over the recent period, he has started 9 of their 16 games, subbing in for 1, but not selected for a period of 6 matches, as we saw, until recalled by the new manager in October. So Mabalulu, a likely candidate here. Depu is been with Angola since 2021. He has 18 caps and 15 goals for the 25-year-old. Most of those, though, have been in those minor COSAFA or local African national championship tournament. So Depu was selected for the African Cup in 2023, but actually, despite being on the roster, was not on the bench for any of the games because he had a muscle injury he came into the Cup with and apparently didn't recover from. He started 2 of their games over the period, as well as subbing in for 4, but he was not selected for 8 of the matches. So Depu always kind of on the outside. I don't think I mentioned that he plays for a club in Poland. In Poland, excuse me, and has also played in Serbia, but was in Angola in his youth. So Depu, a likely candidate. Here, I'm not really sure why we have him as likely given that participation. But anyway, we'll consider it and maybe redress that in part 2. The first of our 2 possible candidates is Zini. He's been with Angola since 2021, 33 caps and 9 goals, and just 23 years old. He plays for AEK Athens in Greece since 2023. And was part of the 2023 African Cup squad. Appeared in all 5 games, actually, starting 1 and subbing into 4 of them. And Zini scored 2 of their goals in qualifying for this cup and 1 of their 9 goals in World Cup 2026 qualifying, so he's been doing quite well. He started, though, only 3 of the games over the period. He subbed in for 4, and he was out with 2 separate injuries for 4, but that includes the last 2 matches. And there were 3 matches he wasn't selected for. But again, the last 2 matches significant because it's under the new manager, but he wasn't a consideration because he's been out with a muscle injury since late September, and that seems to be ongoing because he's also listed as injured for his club. I was a bit confused because my main source didn't have an injury tag on him. Didn't have an injury notice on him. So it may be that he's recovered, but from what we can see, he's been out with the muscle injury for quite a while. So we'll have to update that in part 2. Our only candidate at the possible level is Mbala Zolo. Zolo has been with Angola since 2021, but just 6 caps and 2 goals in that time. He's 29 years old. On the roster of Fiorentina in Italy since 2023. That's a pretty big club, but he's been loaned out to a smaller club, Pisa, since 2025, and was loaned to Lens in France too, but mostly he's played in Italy. He was selected for the 2023 African Cup, but had to decline the invitation due to family problems there. And so Mbala and Zolo just started 2 of their games over the last 2 years and subbed in for 2. But he was not selected for 12 matches, and that includes the 2 games under the new manager in October 2025. Okay, the possible but unlikely candidate is Joe Paciencia, and let me see. He was Came back after a 2-year absence in October 2025. So recalled under the new manager. Didn't start any games, but was on the bench for the first and then not selected for the second. So yes, we have him as possible, but unlikely. We boiled it down to that. But he is possibly possible. I didn't mean to say it that way, but that is what I meant. Given that he came in under the new manager, but we'll see. The first of the seemingly off the squad candidates is Va, and we'll just say that he last appeared for the national team in November of 2022. There, okay, and finally we have João Lucas, and he also last appeared for the national team in June of 2024. He was on the preliminary squad for the previous cup, actually, as was Va, but neither of them really played over the recent period. Okay, that's it. That's it. We've done the forwards. We've done our look at the candidates. We've done part 2. So I'm kind of taken by surprise by this, but we move on to section 3 here. And welcome to new listeners to section 3. We're going to release this as a short version of part 1. That's why we're welcoming new listeners. So in the full version, we talked a little bit about the teams and introduced the candidates. We talked a little bit about like Angola as a team, and we introduced the candidates and their likelihood of making the finals squad. So if you want that information and a bit of biographical information on the players, you can listen to the full version. But in this review, we're just kind of taking a motorcycle ride through the team, going over what we discussed in detail in chapter 2, or in section 2. So we're not concerning ourselves with predicting starters at this point. That's something we're going to do in part 2 when the final squads are released and we know who was selected and not selected. But let's go and talk about the manager. So in September, after not even before World Cup qualifying was finished, long-term manager Pedro Gonçalves, who'd been manager since 2019, was let go, and Patrice Baumel came in and finished up the last 2 games of World Cup qualifying there in October of 2025. So it is Patrice Baumel who will be taking them through this tournament. For goalkeepers, we have 2 definite candidates, Adilson Neblu, usually called just Neblu, and Antonio Signori Dominique, those 2 definite. We have 2 possible candidates too, Hugo Marquez and Agostino Colunga, and we're not going to mention players at the possible but unlikely or seemingly off the squad level here. So those are our candidates for goalkeepers. For central defenders, 2 definite candidates, Kialonda Gaspar and David Carmo. And then one likely candidate, Jonathan Buatu Mananga. We also have 3 possible candidates, Bastos, Alexander Abel, and Ruben Adarito. To the left back position, we have no definite candidates, but we have a likely candidate in To Carneiro, and also likely Pedro Bondo. We also have 2 possible candidates, Nurio Fortuna and Sandro Cruz. So 4 candidates, they'll probably bring 2 there. 4 candidates on the right as well. 2 likely candidates, Eddie Afonso and Clinton Mata, and then 2 possible candidates, Rui Modesto and Jordi Gaspar. I'm tempted to repeat some of the interesting stuff that came out about these players in section 2, but we must move on. So we move on to the midfield, actually, with defensive midfielders. We again have no definite candidates here, but a likely candidate in Show, and a possible candidate in Caliano Manuel. And central midfielders, We do have definite candidates here, two of them, Freddie or Freddie Kulembe and Maestro. We also have two likely candidates, Benny Mukenda. Sorry, that is Benny Mukendi, usually just called Benny, and Antonio Hossi. And then three possible candidates, Ari Papel, Meg, and Mario Balberdia. Those are the defensive and central midfielders. We have no candidates coded as left or right midfielders, and so we move upfield to the attacking part of the field, beginning with left attacking midfielders. We have a definite candidate in Felicio Milson, usually just called Milson, and a likely candidate in Gelson Dalla, who impressed in the last cup, so but is just likely here. And then two possible candidates, Chico Banza and Anderson Cruz. On the right attacking midfield, we have no definite candidates, but we have a likely candidate in Zito Luvumbo and also Benson Manuel, and then a possible candidate in Gilberto. Central attacking midfielders, they don't really use the position, and the one candidate we have has been playing in different positions, but it is Randy Nteka, and he's a likely candidate there. And for forwards, we have no definite candidates either, but two likely candidates, Mabululu and Depu, and two possible candidates, Zini and Mbala and Zola. All right, that is it. And that's our review of the candidates. We can talk about any big names off the squad, but actually for Angola, there really aren't any. The only name I want to put here is the outgoing manager, Pedro Gonçalves. He qualified them for this cup and did very well in the 2023 African Cup, but they parted ways with him during this period. And let's take a look at injuries. We do have a couple of players, The first one is central defender Bastos. He's out with a knee injury since February 2025 and an unknown return date. So we'll put him in the unknown section there. And the other one is forward Zini. He's been out with a muscle injury since late September. And again, a bit of an unknown. We're not sure what's going on with that. But we do hope that we will get more information when we do part two. And speaking of part two, we're going to skip closing thoughts and go right to the preview of part two. So here's what we'll tell you when the preliminary and final squads are published, probably in early to mid-December. We're going to go over that and then tell you which of the candidates made the preliminary and the final squad, and we'll highlight any notable non-selections, any surprise inclusions, and any new players, especially the ones that make the final squad. We'll also, in part two, update injuries. And then one of my favorite parts of part two is the spotlight review, where we predict the starters. So that's it for the part one of Angola. And we hope we will see you. We'll see you in part two again in early to mid-December. We would like to thank Pixabay and Cold Fingers for the wonderful music used in this mediacast. The title of the piece is Eid Mubarak.